Hey, what's up, everybody? Real quick before we get rolling. If you didn't know, about 2 months ago, we released an app. That's right. The Coach Site app connects you with our global community of coaches, allows you to access content delivered by the best coaches and leaders in the game, and makes it easy for you to take all that content and create your own personal digital coaching library that you can access 24/7 from any device. Best of all, it's free to download, it's free to set up a user account. You'll even receive a 30-day trial to TCS Plus, our premium content subscription. If you love coaching, you're going to love our app. Click the link below or in the show notes to download it today. And now, on to the show. Ryan, what is a nailer and what is its significance in Wheeling, West Virginia?
Great question. Hopefully I get this one right. So the biggest cut nail factory, I think, in the world, if I'm wrong on that, then at least it's in North America, was in Wheeling, West Virginia. So when the team came here, they were originally the Thunderbirds. And then I think in kind of a cultural thing, naming contest type deal, they became the Wheeling Nailers. Of all types of names, Nailers. So that's what it is. And like we've got a big nail we give out after the games, and it's part of the
like to the players.
Sure. Oh yeah. We've got
amazing.
Yeah, we've got a mask that kind of replicates our logo, and a big huge cut nail that goes out. And I didn't even know what a cut nail was until I got here. I might not even really know what it is yet, but the Nailers.
Well, it's interesting. Like it's one of those programs. Well, you may not be able to find it on a map. The name Wheeling Nailers, I think, has such a cultural significance just in hockey and sort of minor pro. And it was interesting to learn. Like I think they are outside of the American Hockey League. They are the longest standing professional hockey club in North America. What is how would you describe the overall hockey culture there with the club?
It's interesting. Like it's certainly not a hockey hotbed, but there are the diehard fans that have been here, obviously years and years. And I think we have our kind of core people that you see, night after night. And we're not far. Like we're an hour to Pittsburgh, where hockey, I think, is obviously it's a huge thing, and a couple hours to Columbus, couple hours to Cleveland. But I think right in this pocket, it's still a bit of a niche sport. But the people that come to the games, they're certainly passionate. They like the rough stuff. I think I've already been told a number of times that we need to fight more. But yeah, it's a different hockey culture that I'm used to being in Alberta, but it's good.
How many ECHL games had you watched before making the move?
Zero.
And what's your take on the league, like the level of play?
100 times better than I expected.
Yeah.
And I knew that is when I got the first call and I started looking at the league in terms of, rosters and what type of players were in the league. I knew right then it was better than I had thought. And, now being here and coaching and, we're 40 games in, the level of talent is significantly better than I had expected. I think the overall size, strength, speed of the player, there's not a lot of space out there, and it is a much better league than I had given it any credit for, or that I anticipated being a part of. So yeah, pretty impressed that way.
Yeah, we've had a chance to take in some games just kind of through our travels throughout the years, and I think that's one thing. Like certainly, like the top two lines, the skill and just the overall pace of play is because I think for anybody of our generation, like your mind automatically goes to slap shot. You know what I mean? Like that's what you think you're getting into. But, and I would be curious too, like just, with you making the decision, like just knowing what we know of Kyle Dubas and, his work and what would appear to be kind of how he envisions the game being played and, the success that you had in Brooks. Like this just seems like there's a lot of synergy here. How much did that play into it?
Yeah, I certainly think that did. Initially for me, like I got the call from Amanda Kessel and then did a Zoom with her and Jason Spezza. And for me, it was a lot about what they talked about organizationally, just in terms of, like you said, style of play and, the realistic nature of having a player start in Wheeling and make themselves into Wilkes-Barre and then get themselves to Pittsburgh, and that there was some lineage in the past that Kyle had players do that in Toronto's organization. And not that there's anything wrong with any different ECHL job. I just think this one for me, with the connection to their NHL team, was probably the biggest factor in why this was the one that I wanted to go for. And yeah, it's been interesting to work with different levels now and different people, and just start to learn how the pro game works, and certainly a lot different than junior hockey.
I bet. Well, it occurred to me, like, when you get that call and it comes in, like, certainly there's probably some coaches that might be in a position where they're like, hey, like, the opportunity to go to pro hockey is, they're jumping in with 2 feet. I mean, you had 17 years in Brooks, so established with that program and what you had built there. But I would think it goes without saying, equally as established in the community, just with your family, et cetera. And so when you jump on that Zoom call with Amanda and Jason, as much as they're interviewing you, like, is it almost like you're interviewing them as much just to get a feel for the program? And if so, what would have been some of the specific things that mattered to you?
Yeah, a little bit. I think for me, like, I wanted to learn a lot about how the Wheeling Nailers worked in terms of recruiting. Um, where do the players come from? Are they the ones doing all the signing? Is it American League contracts? Is it ECHL guys? Like, I had absolutely no knowledge of the league, of the
Yeah.
contracts, of anything. And so I didn't really know what I would even be responsible for. And I think that was kind of the big first step, is just learning what the job actually was. Was it a straight player development job? Is it a managing job? And so it does have some similarities to what I did in Brooks. Just in terms of being in charge of all the ECHL contracts and the recruiting on that side. And then there's a heavy piece to this job with Pittsburgh's contracts, Wilkes-Barre's contracts, and being able to have those players down, work with those guys. And um, that was a very, intriguing part of this job to me, was being able to have so many players that will come through here and land in the American League in the same year. And I think to this point, we've had 16 guys here that have also played in Wilkes at some point this season.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, so there's a lot of guys moving around, and that's, for me, that's been the biggest challenge, is just learning kind of the evolving door of guys being in, and you think things are going good and you're rolling, and then all of a sudden the next day 3 guys are gone. And it's 3 guys you're counting on for big minutes every night, and just it's adaptability for us literally every day.
It's funny. So in the time that we've been doing this show, and not, not every National Hockey League coach goes through the ECHL or one of the lower tiers of professional hockey. However, um, I would argue, like, at least from our experience, like, many do. And when you have the opportunity to ask them, like, the benefits of that, they'll say that it's being at this level, as you say, there's a lot of things you can't control, whether it's player movement, etc. But they said it's managing, getting comfortable with problem solving on the roster side of things, but also it's, you're booking buses, you're dealing with hotels, you're dealing with players' apartments. Like, you become a professional problem solver. And they're like, you don't think that's necessarily going to translate to the higher levels, but they're like, it turns out it does. Like, what's been your experience so far in just navigating that?
Yeah, the one thing I'll say with this organization is I'm far removed from some of the stuff I thought I would have to do. So we have someone in charge of travel and airlines and buses and hotels and all that stuff, which is fantastic. Players are living on per diem, so there's no meals on the road. They've all got their own thing going. Um, Apartments, one of my assistants takes care of apartments. Like, so that stuff's been good. I think the biggest challenge has been the roster. It's one, finding players when you need them, and where are they, and what kind of quality a guy can you get in on a short term. And um, these are obviously older guys for me, so it's just the honest conversations of what you're going to need out of a guy, and it might just be a week, a weekend. It could be a longer run, but it's tough to find guys when you end up being short, and we're going through it right now. We're at a space where this coming Wednesday night we got 4D and 11 forwards at the moment. Um, that's what's
Wow.
available to us. So it's like, spend the next 48 hours here looking to make a trade, looking to bring a guy in on the back end at least. we're hit with injuries right now. We're hit with a suspension, and we're hit with guys called up to the American League. And so to say it's a problem solving place, absolutely. Adaptability every day. There's days we walk in and we think we have a great practice planned, and then you show up and you have three healthy D, and your entire practice is blown up, and it becomes a skills day. And I think so far, 40 games in, we've learned the rhythm of every day is going to be different.
Well, I'm going to anticipate there's going to be a little bit of backward skating on the old practice plan here these next few days, so you might be able to sub in there those 11. But you look at junior hockey, and again, just the tenure you had in Brooks, I imagine that you would have had a really good feel to say, this is what we want the finished product to look like at the end of the year, and we can kind of work backwards. And in training camp, we're going to focus on these areas and sort of have almost a ladder up effect in terms of how you teach and build your system. I could sense how that might be a little bit more challenging with as much in and out. Like, how have you had to adapt how you teach and your expectations of the group?
Yeah, honestly, a lot, because the one thing we did in Brooks, and I know it was a problem for years, is we practiced too long. Um, we were on the ice way too much. Our
Like, how
practices
long
were
would you
too.
guys go on for?
We'd go for 2 hours a day. Um,
Wow.
and yeah, and then I get here, and just managing the amount of games, the days off, the bodies on the ice. We get so much more accomplished here on the ice doing skills, off the ice doing all of our systematic stuff in our video. Um, and that's been a change for me for sure. I'm used to just being on the ice and taking things slow and getting it done, and a way different style of practice here where it's 45 minutes. We know exactly what we're up to. Guys are all pre-iced, and we just bang the thing out quickly. Um, we need to get them in and out of the rink here. They've all got real lives, and there's wives and girlfriends and kids and different things. So our days just have to be. We got to execute them a lot quicker. I liked having junior guys at the rink as much as I could. I think idle time
Yeah,
is where you get your problems. So we would
that's
stretch our
fair.
days out, and we're doing the opposite now. But it's been good to do something different that way and to learn, and just a lot more detailed in our approach.
How do you figure that out? Is it a process of maybe some of the veteran players coming to your office and saying, hey coach, like I'm on daycare pickup, I gotta get out of here early, or is that just you kind of reading the room a little bit and saying, hey, there's there might be a different or more efficient way to do things here.
Yeah, early in the year it was a lot talking with the veteran players about what they've done in the past, and how they feel and what they see for the next day and the coming week. And I think we've got a pretty good handle on things now, where it's not hard to read when we need rest. And in this league, there's so many 4 and 5s, 3 and 3s. We're in a stretch right now, I think, of 15 in
You guys are
24.
busy right now. Yeah, I saw that.
We're busy. We're busy. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like day off Monday. We'll have a very light day tomorrow with some video and some yoga. Keep everybody off the ice until morning skate Wednesday, and then again Wednesday, Friday, Saturday we go again. Um, right now, the focus for us is all in games. It's managing bodies, making sure we're ready to play.
You mentioned splitting up like skills on the ice, systems off ice through video. How do you how would you articulate skills in systems?
Yeah, for us, the skill stuff is a lot of breaking it down into groups of especially the forwards and D are split. Oftentimes we've got our wingers and our centers split. And my assistants do a lot of that skill work with our guys, but it's more on the individual. Maybe it's 2 or 3 guys in a rep, but we're doing small area stuff where the focus has nothing to do with tactics. I think basically the tactics for us was all built in the early part of October, and that stuff's now all just check-ins on video, and that's happening every day still, but on the ice we're a lot more focused right now just on skill development.
Got it. And when it comes to those sort of skills, and again, you're coming from an environment where you're getting players ready for the NCAA, and moving up is moving up, but I'm assuming there's some nuance. But what might be some of the skills that you've learned where they say it's the American League coach saying, hey Ryan, like here's some of the gaps that we're seeing. We want to focus on these things. Here's some of the areas where players need to really, some of the details players need to have in their back pocket to be successful?
Yeah, I think for us right now, kind of our key ones are moving their feet on first touch. Um, there's a lot of standing with the puck and waiting, and like for us, it's skate on first touch. So we got to get our guys going. So whether that's just instead of starting a drill from stationary, they have to pull a puck out of the line and take 3 steps before they make a play. But skate on first touch for sure. I think everything relating to wall play. So whether it's pre puck awareness, whether it's picking up resets behind the net, whether it's defensively being able to field a rim and bump it down and away through the weak side. Everything we're doing is wall play. And I think especially at this level, this league, so much of this game is played off of hard rims. You've got to be able, one, to execute them offensively, but then defensively be able to get back, get your first touch, get out the weak side. And if you don't have good wall play, you're in a world of hurt.
How have through your process? Because I was doing the math. Like, did you even get you wouldn't have gotten a chance to go down like to the Penguins development camp? So did you get a chance to attend like training camp?
Yeah, so development camp I missed, but we were lucky as a staff. So Dan Muse brought the American League, the ECHL, and his whole NHL staff together in early September, and we got to do three days of just coaches meetings,
What
which
was
for us I
that?
think was, yeah, it was tremendous. Probably 3 of the most interesting days I've been a part of. Just listening to all 3 staffs, whether it be drill selection, whether it be going over the systems that the Penguins would run this year and how those would need to move down to Wilkes, and then obviously for us, we're working off the same package. So that for me was really beneficial, and then just to get to know some of the other people in the organization, and then from there we were lucky enough we spent 3 weeks in Pittsburgh doing the Penguins training camp and being able to get on the ice with those guys, and then straight to Wilkes-Barre for their camp, and then here. So our lead up to our camp was about a month before we ever got on the ice here in Wheaton.
Got it. What in terms of what you can share, like what were the highlights, or what are some of the things you took away from that whole experience?
Yeah, I think for me, in terms of the coaches' meetings, I think it was just the communication with their whole staff of how I dialed in is such a bad term, but how dialed in each of them were on their specific pieces to the staff, and I think everybody's roles and responsibilities were real clear, and it was also very collaborative though. Like it wasn't at all, this is the only way that we can do things. It was, what do other people see and what are the other ways we can approach it? And so just a really open group of people that wanted to get the best ideas on the table. And then from the training camp piece, seeing how those practices were executed, I got to look at the first practice plan and I thought, there's no way we get through this in 90 minutes. There's just too much. And the way that it went off on the ice, it was just one after another, after another, after another, and it was science. It was pretty impressive, and that first practice was done, and yeah, I was blown away with how quickly it moved.
Wow. You would have, I'm sure, when you're coaching junior hockey, you're trying to instill kind of the on ice habits, but also just the professionalism of the players and preparing them for that next level. It goes without saying, when you're spending time around the Penguins in training camp, you're seeing up close and personal players that are the best in the world. I would suggest in how they just carry themselves, go about their business on and off the ice. Anything that you sort of gleaned from that experience, being around the Letangs, the Crosbys, folks like that?
Yeah, I think, like you said, just kind of that daily approach to their bodies and watching what they do away from the things that they have to do. Just the extra time, pre-practice, post-practice, and those were certainly, like, those were some intense days early in camp, and they were heavy on the ice. But even just watching how they interact with everybody, whether it be new staff like myself or younger players that were there for their first camps, and no one there was better than any other person. And I think that was a pretty interesting part when you're walking around with Hall of Famers and everybody's just another hockey player. And I feel like everyone really got treated that way. And, very approachable people. And that was probably the most interesting part for me is they're just regular hockey players.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Um, so you're coming off a championship season last year, and you've been through that movie a couple of times. Um, you know, if the call doesn't come in, and I would have to think that the change in the NCAA rules plays a factor for a lot of coaches at that level. But how did you view the opportunity to move on from junior hockey?
Yeah, for me, it was 100% the change in the CHL.
Yeah,
I liked what we were doing in Brooks. I think that we had an ability to work with top end Canadian players for sure. We were still in the mix, I think, and getting some nice American kids at times, but you could still recruit, the young player that wanted to play college hockey, and you could work with the NHL draft picks. And, uh, obviously now like that path is over. Those players are all playing in the CHL, and that for me was the sounding bell that it was time to move on and look at doing something different. Where that was going to be, who knew? But I was definitely open for the first time to having some conversations and seeing what was out there.
so, I mean, given all the success that you had in Brooks, and for anybody that's listening, that's not familiar, and you know, Brooks might not be the most obvious place that you're going to win at. Like there's some places, that you've got a bit of a leg up. I don't know if Brooks is necessarily that, which I mean is a soft compliment for what you built there. And but in saying that, like I could see a world where it's like, hey, like there's only one way to there's no guarantees that the model that you had that was successful in Brooks is going to be successful somewhere else. Did you have what sort of conversations did you have maybe with yourself about, hey, like is this a is this a step that I'm ready to take, and how do I embrace this challenge?
Yeah, I think for us, spending, I guess it was 15 years in the AJHL, and we kind of felt like
Yeah.
we were at a bit of an impasse. We'd won, a number of times in a row, and the opportunity to move and join the BCHL, I think that was huge for us as a program, just to be able to challenge ourselves and see some different teams. And we came through that first, I guess, half season playing in the so-called Rocky Mountain Challenge and playing the Surrey Eagles,
Yeah.
and we won those games. And our first full season, we get to the final against Chilliwack, and we're able to win that series. And um, so for me to be able to do it in two different leagues, it was, I think that was enough for me to say we can probably replicate this somewhere else. But would it be easy? Would it be the same? Definitely not. And I think we're learning here right now as we're going through it. It's a struggle every day. We we were injury free early this season. We were good in terms of American League call ups. Our guys were here for the most part, and I'd listened to every other coach in this league talk about how it's ever changing, and your roster is going to be a disaster one day, and you're not going to have enough players. And I just didn't see it. And the winds were rolling, and things were good, and we're in it now. So I think this is the challenging piece for me, and the new part is just being able to work through losing games. We just come off a road trip here where we lost all four games. One in a shootout, one in overtime, lost 1-0 last night. And it's different for me to be going through a 4-game losing streak, but I think that's good. That's part of development. It's part of learning how to manage guys as we're losing. And this is kind of the exciting piece for me, is to do something different.
What's your message in situations like this, just in terms of, because again, look at your schedule. I mean, you come off a 4-game road trip, like you're right back into it. There's not a lot of room to breathe. How do you maybe help take the focus of your players and zero in on some of the key details that you think are going to help you get find your footing?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot with our guys over the last week to 10 days, just about our process has to be more important than our outcomes. Um, we can't score right now to save our lives, and we're trying. Our effort levels through the roof. Tactically, I think we're doing good things offensively. We can't buy a goal. We lose 1-0 last night. We're out shooting a team 30-7 after 2 periods, and we're down 1-0. Can't buy one in the third. Had to score late in Maine on Wednesday night just to get it to OT, losing a shootout. Had to score late Saturday night to get it to OT, losing OT. Um, but we're staying in games, and we're going through the fight. We're badly banged up and injured right now, and um, I give a lot of guys credit for playing through injuries. I give them a lot of credit just for staying in games where, I mean, we're down 2-0 5 minutes into the game Saturday night, and we end up tying this thing and going to OT 2-2. Um, could have gone the wrong way, but we've got a real tremendous group of guys here, and I think they care. I think they want to win, and I think right now the struggle we're going through it together, and we talked a lot about that after the game last night. Is it's no one person that's making this happen for us. It's all of us together, and we'll come out of this in the right way. We just don't know when, and we can't fall apart while it's going on.
How have the relationships changed with you with the players from junior hockey to pro?
Yeah, it's different here, just in the sense that you're not with them as much.
Yeah.
We're in here probably 4.5 hours a day. I'm used to being with these guys like literally all day long. So, um, and these guys have other things going on in their lives away from the rink. So I think the nice part for me is the maturity level is extremely different. Um, you tell them what's expected of them. I feel like they get it. They go out, they execute it to the best they can, and sometimes that leaves a little bit to be desired for both sides. But I really will credit this group of guys with uh, their communication. I think their work ethic. Um, we're getting to be a better team, a more detailed team, and we had to push a little bit early, just on expectations. But I commend every guy for being able to come in every day and meet those expectations. So I didn't know how it would be with the older player at this level. These guys have been great.
I guess in junior hockey, where you're coming from, the kids want scholarships. A few of them were in the mix to be drafted, but those are all things where it's like at the end of the year, or if you do get a scholarship, it affects you next year. Like it goes without saying that like your players now, like if any one of them gets called up to the American Hockey League, like they're going to jump at that, even if they're one of your four defensemen, I would imagine. Um, and so just that sort of there's probably I don't know how much it gets talked about, but there's that probably that like inner competition within the locker room that says, hey, like we're all kind of competing with each other a little bit for that next call up. Like how do you acknowledge that for one, and be like how do you manage that side of it with the players to say, hey, all we can all do, any one of us can do is just control the controllables.
Yeah, I think just a lot of honest conversations, especially when it comes to call ups, because every guy thinks they're going to be the next guy. They want to be the next guy. And when it's not them, you can certainly sense the sad faces and the guys that are down that they didn't get the call up. And I think it's just addressing it. We address a lot of that stuff head on with our guys and let them know why a certain guy was called up over them. And, but you're right. Like they're all in that daily pursuit of being the next guy and competing with each other. And we need to do that. We need to help them get better, and we need to do that all together, trying to win some hockey games at the same time. And there is an interesting balance here on winning versus player development and which one's more important. And I think the player development is the most important thing here because we're trying to get guys out of here into the American League and off on their careers. Um, and at the same time, hopefully the byproduct of that is that we can get these guys together and win some hockey games.
You played such a skilled game when you were in Brooks, and you talk about like struggling with scoring. When you talk about we're doing the right things tactically to score, the puck's just not going in. What are some of those things from a tactical perspective where you're like, hey, if these are the things that, regardless of the score, but if we just want to consistently focus on doing these things right on a night to night basis.
Yeah, right now, like really in the offensive zone, like we're finding it hard to create a lot of motion. So it's getting pucks released out of the corner to the dot. We need that dot release. We need our anchor at the net so that we can reset pucks and win that wall play. And we have to be able to switch sides. I think so much of this league, it's so much swarm defense that we need to be able to use the back of the net, switch sides, get things low to high, and then we're a little vanilla right now offensively. There's a lot of low to high shooting pucks from the point, and that's our whole encouragement to our team is like we have to get moving in high ice. We have to use high ice, um, and I think the longer it goes that it's becoming difficult to score, the more vanilla our offense gets, which is certainly not helping us. It's kind of counterintuitive that we're getting simpler, um, but we just those are the things that we're mostly on right now is the dot release, the switching sides, and then working in high ice. And then it all comes to a premium. You need to get guys to the net, which everybody knows that. And uh,
Yeah.
I think the hard part in this league is it is really tough to score. There's big D and there's real good early box outs. And uh, we are smaller up front and we are young. And you're starting to see it some nights. But uh, I think at times we've scored really well off the rush. We're one of the higher scoring teams in our division still. It certainly doesn't feel like it lately, but we know how to score. We're just going through it.
Just to be clear for anybody listening, like you guys are right at the top of your conference. Like you're going through one right now. You guys have had a very successful year, and gosh, I can remember years ago we had Bruce Cassidy on the show, and it would have been the year after they won the cup, and he kind of pointed out he's like yeah, like we lost 9 in a row the year we won the cup. He's like, this is like, and the message, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, but he goes like, part of that, pro hockey, part of the process is, you take your points when you can because you're going to get kicked in the shins at some point, and you're still just trying to stock the cupboard a little bit for the times when things aren't going well, and then you just, I think you said it really well that hey, we're going through this together, we're going to get out of it together. We don't know when, but we have to maintain that belief and optimism. And it's I can just see from the mentality of a coach and leader is different at that stage.
Yeah, and then we're continually reminding these guys that we are near the top in goals scored, and that
Yeah.
we are a first place team. Well, at least we were before last week. But just trying to continue to push confidence onto this group, and uh, it's a different lineup than it was 8 weeks ago. And I think the guys that are in right now, I think they're feeling the pressure, and we're not coming out with points every night, but like you said, the stockpiling we did early in the year was huge. I think we won a ton of 1 goal games that maybe we shouldn't have. And now some of these nights where we feel like we deserve 2 points, we're not getting it, and it all works out in the wash. We just need to keep getting better daily, and really, I told our guys in November after we had a nearly flawless November, no one cares who wins the November Cup. Um, our
Yeah.
guys were very excited. I don't know if we were undefeated, but we were definitely close, and no one cares. Everybody wants to know who wins in the end, and same idea. No one cares who's losing games in January. We need to be good when it matters.
Your assistant coach, Mitch Gare, friend of the coach's site, coming into, you talked about that process of your staff working with the Penguin staff and the staff in Wilkes-Barre. How have you learned to adapt of just, bringing a new staff together? And is it just you and Mitch, or is there an extended group that's on the ice with your team?
Yeah, no, we've got we've got a big staff for the ECHL. So it's myself and Mitch, and that's been really good for us to have Mitch because he's a veteran coach in the league. He's been around the team, so there's things he knows just from a day to day that we had no idea. Going into road buildings, knowing the other coaches in the league, all kinds of things. So Mitch is very valuable for us, and he's working with our D and our penalty kill. And then we've got Evan McFeeters here, who's he's an assistant coach with us. He's also a skill development coach with the Penguins, and he runs our power play and works with our forwards. And then Carl Popper is our full-time goalie coach, and Carl was an assistant coach with Chicago in the USHL before this. Um,
Got it.
so he's a little more than just a goalie coach. So
Yeah.
we've got 4 guys here full time every day on the hockey side, and it's a big staff for the ECHL. But I think in terms of player development, our guys are certainly never sold short, and we're lucky to have a ton of player development people from the Penguins down in Wheeling, usually bi-weekly to work with our guys. So whether that's skating coaches, skills coaches, so our guys are lucky; they've got lots.
How do you sort of get evaluated? And what I mean by that is, I can see in the National Hockey League now, there's certainly a benefit if you can get players on your roster on their entry level contracts and they can contribute. That's a benefit. There was a time when the ECHL, like the odds of making it to the National Hockey League, were pretty slim and none. that's not the case now. It would appear to be in a salary cap world that if you have a really efficient minor league development system, that can provide a huge upside for the National Hockey League team, whether that's players going to their roster or just assets that can be moved, in various transactions. Everybody wants to win. Winning matters, but from a player development side, how do you manage that part to make sure that you're also, at the end of the day, you're producing players that can go on and be successful? And, I hate to use the word assets, but be assets for the Penguins organization.
Well, that was one of my original questions when we were talking about the job is what is success for the head coach of the Wheelers? Do you have to win? Because if you do, I think you're after a different player. You're looking for veteran guys. You're looking for people who've won in the league before. Or do you need to develop players? And I think the bottom line, the answer was you need to develop players for Scranton. You need guys to leave here, be able to go and contribute in their lineup, whether it's in the short term or whether it's guys to be full-time players next year. And there's got to be guys moving throughout the organization. At the same time, winning kind of breeds some of that development, and you need to have winners in your organization. So the winning piece is important, but I think the player development here, it supersedes it, in my opinion, just by a little bit, because, man, we want to win. So we're at it right now, trying to find the right balance of, we have to get certain guys on the ice and get certain minutes and make sure there's development going on. And then we got to put the guys on the ice we think give us the best chance to win night to night. And it's tough, but I think we've got a really equal group from top to bottom, and it makes it easy for us that we can kind of go with everybody in all situations. And yeah, we're lucky to have that kind of balance on our team.
You mentioned you and your son are going to the Penguins game tonight, and you're showing up at the game as a dad. And no, I think your son's 10 years old, so I'm sure like thrill for him just to see be up close and personal with that roster. But how do you see the game differently now? Like when you're in the stands, like are you watching it from a fan's perspective? Or are you maybe like what are some of the details and nuances that you're paying attention to?
Because I know the system they're playing so well, I'm just watching the Penguins tactically, watching for things that I think they're doing better than us, obviously, which is usually everything. But looking at ways that they're defending certain situations and, is it exactly how we're doing it right now, or is there something else going on? Watching how they're coming out of their zone and, certainly the way they're playing in the offensive zone right now, everything that they're doing is just at another level from where we are. And there's a lot of stuff that we can and we need to replicate from their game, but I don't see it as a fan at all. It's just purely tactical. And I spend a lot of time. I love when our seats are across from the bench, because I spend a lot of time looking at the bench and watching, different situations, which coaches are talking to each other and how they interact. And yeah, it's interesting for me on a different level.
What did you glean from Dan Muse? I mean, I just this morning I was reading an article about how Pittsburgh and the Islanders, like nobody expected them to be in the playoff mix, but here they are, and it's been one of the real feel good stories I think of the season. Not just because I think any time that Sidney Crosby is in the playoffs, that's good for hockey and good for the league. But gosh, man, like I don't think too many people had Dan Muse leading the Penguins back to the playoffs in their bingo card. Yet here we are, and I think really good example of a coach that has has come up the hard way and had to prove, hasn't had maybe the benefit of saying I played in that league, therefore I, maybe the doors open a little bit wider for me. What have you learned from him in terms of just how he approaches his day to day, but also just his career?
Yeah, and I knew Muser a little bit before from his days at Yale, being out recruiting in Brooks, and so there was a bit of familiarity there. But I think for me, the most impressive part of training camp was just the attention to detail, to the point where, like, as coaches on the ice supporting the practice, like we were told how many pucks you need to have, where they need to be, and exactly where those pucks are going to go, and every fine detail, every single detail for the staff was laid out, to the point of exactly when you're going to put the puck into the corner, and for me, just the detail that he approached every single practice with. I think he lost his voice after the second day, and not for yelling, just for communicating. Like he was just on it. His intensity level on the ice at practice was higher than anyone, higher than any of the players. Like he was out there and he was into it. And I think there was a level of respect probably gained, by everybody for him just watching him do his thing on the ice at practice. Um, and then from there, like I'm not surprised at the success. I think that staff is, um, I know every staff's hardworking, but those guys they're in it every day here, working with those guys on the individual stuff, the team stuff, and there's a ton of talent on that team. And I think one of the big things is just being able to pull the best out of all those guys. They're at different stages in their careers, and I think some of those players have been written off by other people. But I think there's a lot of belief with that whole staff of what they have there. And yeah, been pretty impressed to watch like night after night pulling points out of games, and it's something a lot of people didn't see coming.
I'm curious, like with your practices, man, because like, you guys had such a dynamic group, and obviously part of that equation is the skill. But what were some of the hallmarks of your practices in Brooks, and I'm assuming that have carried on to Wheeling, but just in terms of how do you play um, or layer in sort of an up tempo style of game in a game that's very much driven by trying to put the puck in the other team's net as much as possible.
Yeah, I think for us, a lot of what we did is line rush stuff. All different types of drills, whether it's two guys on the rush, three, four, um, but it's just repetitive line rushes and different entry concepts and different ways to possess off the line rush. And I think here it's different because everything's defended so much better.
Yeah.
Some of the tactics aren't as applicable. It's not as easy to manipulate people off the rush. The back pressure is certainly a lot better. The sticks are longer, the bodies are bigger, and but it's still similar ideas. I think the best part of the offense on this current team is our line rush. Offensively, in zone, like I said, we want to get these guys moving more and just confidence that we can be a little bit positionless at times. We're not there yet. We're in a daily battle trying to get us there. But I do think that for me, it's the skating, it's the line rush, it's the possession, it's trying not to dump pucks in, and that's a constant battle too because the pro game certainly has a lot more of that. I mean, teams using the hard rim since Florida won with it. I think that our players want to rim pucks. They want to get in on forechecks, and that's different for me because it's the complete opposite of what I was trying to do for the last 17 years. And so we've got a little bit of a mix right now of how we're playing, and for quite a while it was working for us, and we'll get back there.
I'm curious. I mean, you're a hockey dad. Your son's a hockey player. I'm going through this too, and I think it's natural for you to kind of think backwards and think about like what are the skills and how can we influence creativity. And so for example, I know my son's team, like that's one thing we've addressed. It's like we don't dump pucks in. Like we don't chip pucks, we don't do anything. And I know, and sometimes you have conversations with the other coaches. I'm like, look, like this is going to benefit these kids so much if we can, instill the mindset that when you have the puck, you make a play. You make a play. You try, and if you turn it over, that's okay. But you try and put it on somebody else's stick, or you try and maintain possession of it. How have you sort of maybe what's your lens on development, and maybe when you go further down the grassroots, and what some of those important details or skills are?
Yeah, I mean that's the biggest one for me. My guy's been lucky to have lots of great coaches, up to 10 years old. But I think the paramount for me is let kids make mistakes, challenge them to make plays, ask them to make moves, ask them to break people down one on one. So if they turn it over and give up a breakaway and you get scored on at 9 years old, who cares? Um, to me, there's another piece of that where the goalie gets to face a breakaway, and that's good development for that player. But I
Well
think that
said.
the paramount should be, you know, using skills, using small area plays, moving pucks, and like really instilling in kids that making mistakes is completely fine. Getting scored on is all right, and you have to track back and you have to work hard when you turn a puck over. But it's okay to turn it over if you're trying to make something happen. Um, And I would rather just see a team that's all out offense all day long, because I think you can teach these kids to defend as they get older. You can teach someone how to chip a puck. You can teach someone how to rim a puck. But if you've gone your first, 10 formative years in the game and you haven't learned how to manipulate a triangle, you haven't learned how to cut back on an entry, you haven't learned how to keep a puck on your stick and use body position to hold it and wait for players, or how to use open space, I think you're behind the eight ball real fast. And it's great that you can dump it in, but it's one pretty basic skill that I think you can grasp at any point. So I'm with you on that 100%.
You had a lot of really high end players come through Brooks, most notably Cale Makar. And I'd be curious because I've gotten to know Gary Cale's dad quite well just through his work with Hockey Calgary. He's a big partner of ours, and he's a really interesting guy to talk development with. But I didn't quite appreciate, like, he wasn't under the radar, like he wasn't even on the radar, like, and not when he was a kid, like we're talking like when he was a teenager, he wasn't on the radar. And you found him, and I'd be curious, like, one, when you're watching players, like, what are some of the underlying tells that might signal to you that, hey, this player, like, regardless of their perceived pedigree, like, this player has talent that can be developed and enhanced. And how do you, when you have these players, like, how do you maybe help build that confidence that, I mean, as you said, it's like, hey, I'm going to encourage players to try and beat somebody one-on-one, and I'm going to be okay with them making mistakes.
Yeah, for me, there's a couple of little things. So I get drawn towards a player that has a high elbow and has their hands away.
What's that mean? Okay.
Just like physically, like
Like
their
hands
elbows
hands away
high.
from your body. Yeah.
Yeah, hands away, high elbow, and then deception. Anyone who does anything deceptively, and whether that's with their feet, their eyes, their hands, um, to me, like, that's a pretty big separator. The first thing I noticed with Cale, and it was watching him warm up as a U18 affiliate, he was high elbow, his hands were away, everything he's doing was deceptive, and it was like, there's some sprinkles in this player, and I want to know more. I had no idea if he could skate or if he had an IQ or any of that. I knew there was something different about him. Um, another one that was the same for me was Aiden Fink, who's having a heck of a time at Penn State right now. And same idea with Finker, deceptive player, hands away, high elbow, and Finker was not looked at as one of those, like, top guys. He was too small. And just the success that those guys have had and watching them, and to me, it's their confidence with the puck, it's their confidence to hold on to it, it's their ability to break people down through their deception. Um, I think that one piece, the deception, is probably the biggest separator of a skill player of anything.
How would you work on deception in practice?
It's a hard one. So we don't do as much of it here, for sure. We did lots in Brooks, and I do lots with my kid, but um, a lot of it is not allowing them to look where they're going to pass. So it's going to kill a drill, but you can't look at who you're passing to. You have to look elsewhere. Um, you have to have a top hand punch before you make your move, so that you can sell deception one way or the other. And then a lot of stuff with D, just on retrievals, using their feet to shave ice and to show that they're going one way, and then obviously using the other. But um, that's probably the biggest separator for me, is the deception. So I love those three things. I love the eyes, the hands, the feet, the different ways to create it. But it leads to a lot of mistakes. It leads to a lot of turnovers, and if you're not okay with it, you can't develop it.
You touched on the wall play and how important that is at all levels, but particularly at the pro level. When you have players that maybe are a little bit undersized but highly skilled, like, how do you advise them to go into the wall to get possession of the puck back? Or is that the same? Is it the same for every player?
There are some differences. I think definitely for a bigger player, if you arrive early, you've got your body position, and you can use your size and your strength. I think if a smaller player arrives early to a wall play, you're getting pinned into the wall. You're getting your wrap and your elbow popped, and you're losing possession. So I think for a smaller player has to be real efficient at arriving right on time and being able to move their feet out of that wall play off the yellow. So we spend a lot of time just doing resets from whether it's from the half wall or from the point to the back of the net, and having guys hold their feet on the goal line to the very last second so they can pick up and be moving on first touch. Um, and we do have a player like our captain here is a big body, 6'3", probably 215, and if he arrives early, he can counter hit, he can use his frame. But we have lots of guys who can't. So it's the two different ways that you can approach it, and I'm sure there's lots of other ideas and tactics around it. But I really think being able to move your feet on first touch, and you can't do it if you're too early.
I'm assuming you haven't done the full circuit yet in the ECHL, but on what you've seen so far, if somebody was like, I want to go watch a hockey game in an ECHL building, where would you advise them to go? Where's there like kind of where's the hidden culture?
Yeah, Toledo is pretty cool.
Is it
Yeah, it's about 8,000 sold out every night.
really? Wow.
Yeah, we've only been there once, and we were lucky to get off to a quick 3-0 lead, and maybe we quieted the building a bit. But yeah, I think that's a pretty unique place just in terms of fan support, and there's been good ones. I mean, we just spent the weekend in Worcester. They had back-to-back 7,000 crowds. So yeah, it's a cool league. There's some good buildings. Cincinnati was great for their home opener. It's a lot different than I thought.
Who's on speed dial? As you sort of navigated this part of your coaching journey, and I just part of the reason I know that we've gotten pretty familiar with the South Carolina Mafia with Jared Bednar, Ryan Warsofsky, Cale McLean. Like I'm missing a bunch. Like they've just had this unbelievable run of pumping out coaches down there. But who have you picked up the phone and called to sort of navigate things so far?
Yeah, a lot of what I've done is just continue to talk to the same guys I talked to in junior. Um, and in this league, like I'm very conscious of the whole trade world, and getting to take advantage of as a first time coach, and so a little cagey in some respects, but just trying to be measured in what we do with our roster. But I think for me, having Mitch Jaguar here around the league, that's probably been a big one. And but yeah, we're pretty tight knit with who we're talking to right now.
That's fair. That's fair. Um, so if I was the coach of the Wheeling Nailers, I would have it in my contract that I do not coach on Saturdays up until Christmas. I only go to college football games. I know Morgantown's down the road for you, West Virginia. Have you had the opportunity to kind of explore other sports and just the sporting culture and take in some of that college football world?
No, not yet, but
Oh,
I
you're doing it
certainly
wrong.
think.
I need to be your agent,
I
man.
know,
I'd have to.
I know. There's so much going on around here. Like my one of my assistants a couple weekends ago, we went to Cleveland for a basketball game. Um, we've obviously been to Pittsburgh. We did a he did a Steelers game for the playoffs, which I think obviously that's pretty unique. We've done some Pirates games, but I think the whole college football scene, it's interesting to me because my kid knew nothing about football and nothing about college until we got here, and then all of a sudden he's coming home and he's like, Dad, nobody plays mini sticks, nobody talks about hockey at school, it's only football. And like he wants to get a football jersey, and like, do you know anything about football? And he's like, no, but everybody plays football at recess. And they got told they had to watch the Pitt West Virginia game one weekend, and he's like,
Like, hold
Dad,
their
what?
teachers told them that?
Yeah. And he said, like, what's Pitt? Like, well, that's the University of Pittsburgh. And he's like, but what are they playing? Like, they're playing football. It's two
Yeah.
universities, colleges. They're playing football, and like, so the whole culture here is so much different. We actually don't play Friday home games for the first month of the season because high school football is going on here.
And it's just that big.
It's that big, so we would be like
Holy
empty
cow.
buildings. So no Friday home games until I think until late November.
That's wild. That's wild. Well, yeah, this is just like a little bit timely, but so this last Saturday we did an event here in Vancouver, and we did like a live podcast with Jesse Marsh, and Jesse's the head coach of Canada's national soccer team. He's going to be coaching them at the World Cup. He's actually from Racine, Wisconsin, and was an assistant coach on the 2010 World Cup team for the U.S. He's coached in the MLS, but then he went to Europe. He coached in the Austrian League, the Bundesliga, the English Premier League. Now he lives in Tuscany, and one of the cool things was like he had 3 kids, and he talked a lot about like this experience of taking them over there. And there's the work or football side of it, the coaching life, but then there's this other side where you're kind of you're going on this big adventure with your family, and you don't know exactly where it's going to lead to, but being a coach in professional sports, you're probably not spending 17 years in Wheeling. Not that that's a bad thing, but how have you sort of navigate all this with your wife and your kids, and just soaking up this lived experience?
Yeah, that's been an interesting transition for sure. My 10-year-old loves the hockey piece of it. He's got that in Pittsburgh, so he's happy. My 6-year-old is one of the most unique boys in the whole world. That he loves hockey more than anything, and he refuses to play it.
No way.
So
Okay.
he won't do it. He will not play a team sport, but he'll go on the ice by himself every day. He'll play mini sticks. He loves everything about hockey. He'll watch it. He will not play. So for him, transition wise, it's been easy because he just keeps doing the same thing he was doing at home. Um, and it's different for my wife. She's not working here right now. She's just at home taking care of the kids and kind of doing that thing. But um, for most people, Wheeling's a small town. For us, it's quite a bit bigger than it was in Brooks. So we've moved to the big city, and there's lots for us to do here. We're close to Pittsburgh. It's been cool, and certainly like culture is a heck of a lot different, in a good way. Just learning different things, different people, different sports. Yeah, no complaints at all.
So knowing what you know now, if you could go back 10 years and have a conversation with yourself and say, Ryan, one day you're going to coach pro hockey and you're going to want to start thinking about these things to help you with that transition, what would it be?
Probably studying the pro game more. The game is a heck of a lot different than junior hockey. There's no question about it. So I think we could have maybe adapted our teams a little bit in Brooks to play a little bit more of this style, but what we were doing was working, so we were happy with what we were doing. Um, so there's been some adaptability that way. So I probably would have studied the pro game a little bit more. I think definitely if I knew this was happening 10 years ago, keeping a lot closer tabs on guys as they moved from junior to college to pro and where everybody is, and um, just your finger on the whole recruiting piece of everything. And um, but I mean, I think it's a different world, and I don't know if there's a whole lot of things that you could say you wanted to do differently or you would have done differently. You just kind of jump into it and start figuring it out day by day. And for us, that's what it's been. It's been a lot of show up and figure it out.
That's awesome. Well, hey man, it's been really fun to watch your journey here, and I know it certainly caught my attention when you made this move, and it's been great to see you have some early success, and no doubt you guys will you'll wiggle your way out of getting your full roster back, and best of luck to you down the stretch here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot for having me on.